Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode of Voxcaster. I'm your host Dan, and on this episode of Get to Know, I'm bringing Brian along for the adventure for our special guests. As the local Drukhari players, it brings us great pleasure to introduce to you guys the one, the only, Archon Skari.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the chat.
So, as most of you guys already know, these episodes are more or less just a little sit-in chat where we take a little journey down memory lane, and we kind of learn the little things of how'd you get into the hobby, some of the armies you played along the way, some achievements you've made. Even if you want to throw a couple of stories in from some tournaments, be more than happy to listen. So we'll start our stuff off. We'll get you to introduce yourself. So for some of the listeners that may be not too familiar with who you are.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks a lot for the invite. I'm really excited to sit down and chat 40K for a little bit. So I hope everyone's ready for the ride. We're on the cusp of a new Dark Eldar Codex, so you can just imagine how much my blood is boiling right now, just in anxious anticipation. And I'm excited because I've been I do content creation mainly on YouTube. I'm on a variety of different podcasts like Chapter Tactics on the Frontline Gaming Network. I do battle reports and tactical videos and hobby streams on Twitch. So it's generally it's my full-time job. So I do content, like I do hobby like content for people to enjoy. And I've mainly been playing Drukhari for the last 10 years or so now. Almost, no, is it? About 12 years or so. So it's been a while. And I've been playing the game for about 20 years now. Yeah, so
Oh wow,
it's
so you got many editions under your belt then.
yeah, third edition was my first edition. Good old Black Templars versus Dark Eldar box set back in the day.
Nice.
And my main army was, of course, the Black Templars, which I have my little Black Templar shelf back there with a lot of the classic old models, like my original Land Raider Crusader and my classic Empress Champion. And so every once in a while I'll throw the Astartes on the table and, you know, pray to the God Emperor of mankind as I destroy the filthy Xenos. But most of the time, I do real space raids and I jump out with fast-moving skiffs and venoms and mandrakes and scourge and a whole variety of denizens of the Dark City to
All the
play
fun stuff.
to play the game. Yeah, that's right. I'm a member of the Canadian ETC team or WTC team, like the Canadian team. I'm the vice captain.
Nice.
So I do a lot of competitive gaming, but I know film like an 8 series narrative campaign with mini wargaming. So I do both. I play very competitively, but I can also make sure my, warlord challenges your warlord to single-handed combat and we end up duking it out in the middle of the table.
Oh, but
So
those make
it's
for the most epic, just
the
story wise.
stories. Yeah.
Just to stand up, just hold still. I need to take a picture. I just need to live this.
Yeah, you go exactly. It's like when Lilith Hesperax goes in and hits 6 times with her hair and murders your warlord with her hair because she's that cool.
She is pretty awesome, and I'm pretty excited for the new model that they've been teasing. So
Oh yeah, it's
Just
great.
everything they've been teasing.
Everything. They know how to pull at our heartstrings. They're like,
Mm.
and give us more of your money, hobbyists.
Yep. So pretty much. So yeah, saying you've been playing the game for a very long time, third edition, and pretty much you said first army you actually went into was Black Templars. So along the journey, what armies have you actually played? Or you know what? Let's just take a little step back. As far as hobbying and miniature wargaming, was 40K your first true love, or was there that one game that kind of got you into the wargaming beforehand?
I so my the way I started in the hobby, I've been playing 40K has been like the only miniature game that I've really played,
Okay.
basically. I have played other games like once I started, but my first introduction into like miniature gaming was a friend of mine who had like a couple of Hero Clicks models, like way back in the day, like 20 years ago. And
Hmm.
it might have not been Hero Clicks, but they had clicky things on the bases, so I'm assuming they were Hero Clicks. Anyway, he kind of ran through a little demo game with me. I found it very confusing. And then I went to England shortly after and walked into a hobby shop, and I had been doing just like scale modeling. My dad had bought me a couple of like planes, like airplane kits, and I had
Okay,
like
so just modeling in general,
I had like
essentially.
Jacques Cousteau's like ship, like the Clouseau, whatever the Callisto, whatever the name of his ship was, and that that was one of my favorite, like because it was in my room and everything.
Mhm.
So I liked that aspect of cutting the sprue up and gluing it together. So that I had like a background in that. But in terms of miniature gaming, I walked into like the store because they had miniatures, like the scale miniature boxes on the in the window, and I walked in, and then I saw a wall of Warhammer, and I was like, that looks awesome. And the rest is history.
Nice, nice.
Yeah.
So you were saying Black Templars, third edition box was how you kind of got started in. So along the way, as we know, Drukhari, obviously one of your other true loves. What other armies, I guess, you have played or tested around with along the way?
Well, it's funny because I'm actually trying to find it right here. But when I started, Black Templars were cool. And I grew up in Mexico, right? So, we didn't really know that there were any game stores nearby. I lived in Mexico City. There were a few, but I was young at the time, and so the nearest game store to me was about 2 hours travel by like
Okay.
public transport. So I ended up making a thing of going to a day. It was like a little migration. I'd pack up all
Hmm.
my stuff. I'd like get up early, take a bus, to take a subway, to take another bus, to take another bus, to walk to this place, and I'd play games. But this was the thing that caught my eye, was the original Chaos Codex from second
Ooh.
edition. And I wanted to play Chaos, actually. Nurgle was one of the favorite like pictures in the iconography, especially the giant portrait of a great unclean one that's in the original Chaos Codex from second
Okay.
edition. Not just like that, and the Predator, like the Predator conversion with like a crazy like great unclean one like coming out of it or whatever.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
I
check
don't
out
think
some
I've ever
pictures of
seen
that.
that. I actually have to check that out
Hmm.
sometime.
There's some really cool conversions, and I was like, I want to play I want to play Chaos. So I didn't know that, I couldn't really afford, models back then.
Hmm.
So I told my mom, I was like, Mom, can you buy me some Chaos Terminators? Because I was like, they look amazing. And this guy right here, it's like an old school Great Unclean one, really nice
Hmm.
art.
Nice.
Yeah, really gross
Does
too.
look pretty good.
Yep. And I didn't know back then that they were only available in blister packs, right? Little blisters,
Ah,
like
it's
the metal
true.
Terminators. So in order to get like a unit of Terminators, you need to buy like 5 or 6 blister packs, right?
Okay.
And so she ended up buying me a box of Space Marine Terminators, right? They were
Ah,
like
okay.
the new plastic kit had just come out, like not the one that we use now, but like the previous plastic kit.
Yeah, the
Anyway.
new for its time. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. They were all on little 25 mm bases, so like little bases, and
I
the
think I
kind
even
of
still got
feet
some of those
came off
kicking
the
around
side and
myself.
stuff. Yeah. And so I ended up painting them as Black Templar Terminators because I had the Black
Okay.
Templars from the kit. And since I'd already invested all the time and effort and money into that, I was like, well, I can't really afford to collect anything else. I guess it's the one thing. So I ended up going with them for a long time.
Okay.
Then I played Chaos, I've played Necrons, I've played Orcs, I've collected Harlequins and Eldar and uh, Inari and
So you've definitely dabbled in pretty much a
Mhm.
good wide scale of what 40K has to offer right now.
Yeah, Astra Militarum, where I have the Talarn that I use, old
Yes.
school metal Talarn models. Oh yeah, those look
Yeah,
awesome.
you've been painting the Talaran on your
Hmm.
Twitch.
Yeah, it's really fun. I like the classic look of like the old models. It just there's
Mm.
something about them that just yells like classic, you know.
Well, it's funny
Yeah.
because you say that, but like the amount of the old school models that I still have sitting on the shelf that I'm just like, you know what? You just sneak a couple in even now while you're playing. Like, I'm a Chaos player myself too, and like Black Legion's kind of where I started. So like I actually have the three generations of Abaddon from the original pewter
Nice.
model to the next gen one to the new one, and I compare them and be like, it'd just be funny playing a new scale and just boop, little Abby.
Well, yeah, or if you're an orc player and you have access to the old cardboard killer can,
Oh
right?
God,
And you
yes.
can, technically it's a Citadel miniature, so why
No,
don't you
true,
use that
true.
too, right? And it comes pre-painted. printed onto a cardboard piece. Plus,
Oh.
it's like this thin. So imagine a line of sight. You can like hide it behind a
Yeah,
laptop.
you turn it. It's just like I'm gone.
Exactly. Yeah.
So obviously, with the many years under your belt and all that, like I'm sure. So actually, let me rephrase that. So with the many years under your belt, I'm assuming competitive play wasn't kind of your first thing to jump into. I'm assuming you probably had a lot more fun with like the narrative side of it, or were you just a person that you just enjoyed the competitive aspect of the game?
I've since the beginning, I've enjoyed the competitive aspect of the game more
Okay.
than because I like the battle of the minds aspect of competitive, regardless of the winning and losing. That's part of a game. You win and
Hmm.
lose. I love the strategic sort of like duel that happens against a player that has a similar mindset as you or a similar like a level of gameplay where
Okay.
you can sort of it's like fencing, right? You just like
Yeah.
fencing back and forth and you're
Hmm.
like touche, touche back and stuff like that. And that is one of the most rewarding aspects of the game for me. So when I started the game, yes, I played with my brother who was a
Hmm.
little younger than I was, and we'd split the contents of the starter set, right? You'd be like, you're the Dark Eldar, and I'm the time. And it was always, always very, very not in favor of the Dark Eldar at all. So we basically took turns losing, right? Until one day I won with the Dark Eldar, like half of that box. And I was like mind blown. I was like, oh my gosh, I can actually win with this aspect.
Hmm.
And then eventually it got like to the point where we're like, you know what? Let's just split the Space Marines down the middle, and you play with half the Space Marines, and I play with half the Space Marines. And then the Dark Elder got put in a box for a very, very long time. But one of the first things I did was go to a tournament after having played the game 6 months to a year or so.
Hmm.
And I had a friend of mine who had just a whole bunch of old Space Marine models that he never used. He just had them in this old GW case. And he was like, yeah, you could just have these. I'm never going to use these. So I was able to build like a 2,000 point army, which at the time was like massive. And I had to give like every upgrade to all my models that I could to like make it 2,000
Just
points.
just just to fill those extra little points.
So I had like way too many last cannons, and each sergeant had like way too many upgrades.
Nonsense. There's never
And
too many.
definitely too many. The mantra of more boys, less toys should be something that you keep in mind all the time. But I had a lot of fun. I played 3 games. I played against Gene Stealers, like Tyranids. I played
Mhm.
against Space Wolves, and I played against Necrons. And um, and that was my first like experience going to a tournament. But the community that I played with was very much into that competitive like aspect where the unwritten rule was you just built a hard list and played hard.
Okay.
Even though it was like a very friendly environment, it was always about trying to kind of one up each other in that sense, but in a
Yeah.
very friendly environment. It was not like it was cutthroat, but it was the culture was not cutthroat in like in a jerk way. It was cutthroat,
Hmm.
but like in a, can I have this really cool idea and I'm gonna like prove that it's a good idea, right?
And,
And
and to be
and
honest, like that's kind of the best scenario because, like you said, as long as you're doing it in a friendly way, and like you were saying, like when you go into a game, it's like you are going to lose. Like you're never going to win every game, but sometimes those games you lose are almost better because then you're going to be learning new techniques that you're like, so how can I do this? How can I counter him next time? And then as a player, it makes you better because you're striving to get to the next step.
Right, 100%. And it's something very important. Like I do some 40K coaching, and one of the things that, I try to kind of teach clients is that you need to be losing to really get better at the game.
Mhm.
And even myself, when I'm testing out a matchup for the first time, or say you and I, meet up and play a game, like the first game that you and I play, I'm gonna be very relaxed, right? Like
Mhm.
I'm not there to just win, 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 right? I'm there to kind of learn who you are, learn about your list, like take it all in and really soak up the information, especially if we're not at a tournament, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna take that information and then use that information next time we play, if we're at a tournament. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? Like, so it's all about like, really kind of learning how you like play best, but losing is a part of it. Like you cannot, yeah, absolutely, you're not going to win every game. And the trick is not to blame the dice and to kind of control what you can control. And I could go into a whole tangent about that. But it's but if you're not losing, if you are in your local game store right now and you're the big fish in the pond and you haven't been losing a game, you need to find people that will beat you to get better.
No, definitely, because you're almost kind of stuck in that little stalemate because you're just going to keep playing the same way. And like you said, if they're not up to your, I don't want to say standard, but up to your level of experience with the game, like I said, you'll never learn more. So yeah, it's always fun to find new players or go maybe out of town, find other tournaments and meet
new players. Yeah.
Exactly.
And of course now it's a little harder. We've got the global pandemic happening and
Yeah.
whatnot. So be safe out there. Do what you feel comfortable with, but make sure that you're not like be conscious. And then other than that, it's or you can just put it upon yourself to teach the people you play with to beat you, right? Make them better. Pull everybody up with you. Help them beat you, and your games will become a lot more engaging over time.
No, definitely, and just that much more enjoyable. So, the question for me is, with Drukhari, you were saying that you have obviously had them, they got thrown into a box a little bit. So when did the love for Drukhari kind of hatch back for you and you kind of just took them forward? Because obviously I'm a huge fan of yours, and the way I found you was when I first got my 7th edition Dark Eldar rulebook. I'm like, YouTube right away. Typed in Dark Eldar, I seen your name, I probably binged every video you had in a run of a whole weekend. So where was the jump back into Drukhari for yourself that you kind of just took away with it?
So I made the Black Templars became as much as I'm quote unquote known for playing Drukhari right now, the Black Templars was what I was known for playing about 10 years ago. I was like the Black Templar guy because nobody really played Black Templars, and around at least this area in Ontario, I went to a lot of tournaments, once a month, twice a month. I was at every event I could put my hands on playing Black Templars, and it wasn't the most competitive Space Marine army, but I did well with it. Then around 4th edition, Black Templars in general and Space Marines got really silly, really fast with crazy drop pod armies and a whole bunch of stuff that just got really meta all of a sudden. And I went through this streak where I played 20 or 30 games and just crushed everyone. And at that point, it kind of got stale for me because it was too easy to win in a way. I just had all the tools in front of me and I was playing them, and people, I could feel people not even really wanting to play because they were this again. You know what I mean? So
kind of like the whole Iron Hands from a little
you know what I
bit
mean?
ago.
Yeah. But so I understand when you've been playing a faction forever and you play through good and through bad and your ups and your downs, and then all of a sudden you get a rules boost and you're yes, every Necron player out there that's been faithfully playing Necrons through good and bad, all of a sudden gets a good rule set and everybody's Necrons. You're I've literally been playing Necrons since they were terrible and they phased out. You know what I mean? What are you talking about? Anyway, so I go to a tournament with my Black Templars, and any sort of prize support I'd win, because I was a poor student and had no money, I'd clear the local stores of all the Dark Eldar stuff they had, all the old Dark Eldar. So I basically started reading back in the day when forums were a thing. Ooh, forums.
Ooh.
So I found out what this the standard good Drukhari lists were, you know what I mean, their builds and stuff. And I really liked the idea of pirates, and it took me a long time to understand how to play the game because the learning curve was crazy, absolutely nuts. It's a very tough learning curve. But I loved the fact that nobody played them, at least visibly. There was no one that played the Dark Eldar. But everything I heard was, if you play them well, they're incredibly powerful. But everybody was they kind of suck though because they're they're just bad, right?
They're hard army to master.
Right, exactly. So I was challenge accepted. And that's really what spearheaded my love for the Drukhari. And my love for when playing Drukhari, being able to stick with them through like 7th edition, which was a complete and utter like crapshoot,
And
because
that's actually when I jumped in with them.
yeah, it was like Riptide Wing and Battle Company, free rhinos everywhere, and it was like I just want to pull my hair out.
Yeah.
But but you kind of stuck with it, and you learned how. And also in like 8th edition, where I was like, I'm going to use mandrakes, and everybody's like, mandrakes. I'm like, and I, after a couple of events where you win and you have mandrakes in your list, they're like, mandrakes.
Oh,
So
I always have a trusty 10 to 20 in every list I ever make, even still now.
yeah,
It's like when
so,
I started watching your videos and you'd run Razorwing flocks and the beasts and stuff, and I'm like, what the hell are these Drukhari units?
right, you've never seen them before. So I love Drukhari because they are very unforgiving. You have to be very technical when playing them. But I love them because no matter how bad the matchup looks, there's always a chance that you can win because they have like a tool for every situation. You just have to kind of pull it out of them and squeeze it like a good like juicy lemon. You just have to be like, and then like every last drop, to get that nice tangy finish. And so, metaphors aside, it's a very rewarding army to win with, especially when, going up and having somebody be like, "Psh, I gats this," you know what I mean? And they're like all cocky, like, I've got my 2 repulsor executioners and Gulliman, and I'm gonna, this is in 8th edition, I'm gonna like just shoot you off the board. And I'm like, okay, and I'm gonna deep strike my whole army that I can and hide behind these buildings, and you do nothing for 3 turns. And they're like, oh crap.
And the thing is, like a lot of these players that are like super confident, super this and that, usually don't know how they play, especially with a skilled player. And you're just like, okay, you got that. Here's what I can do. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, a lot of the times, most of the tournaments I win or most of the games I win, I'll have like 3 models left at the end of the game. I'll be like, I've got 3 models left, but I win, and they're like, and they still have most of their army or, a big chunk of their army. And they're looking at my army and be like, how the hell did I lose? Well, I
It's a
still have
game
3
of
models left.
sacrifice.
Yeah. I was not tabled and I have more points than you. So
It's exactly right. It's all about the points. That's it. It's very simple. At least right now, it's very simple. Just focus on getting points and denying your opponent's points. And the Drukhari is super good at speed and like jumping around, so they can be places where you wouldn't, suppose they would be.
I
So
know.
that's
Yeah, and that's why I tell a lot of people they're just like, oh, but how come I can't win? It's like I can't kill the models, this and that. It's like, well, maybe focusing on killing the models is your downfall. And
yeah.
that's what a lot of people say, like they're not playing to the objectives. It's like if I can max out my primaries and not kill a single model, I'm winning.
Yeah, I did that recently. I played against Don Huson a couple of months ago. I think now a little over a month ago, and he was playing like a Myphitic Blightholder like Death Guard list, which is very hard to kill stuff. Namely, like first of all, secondly, with the Drukhari army, you're playing like 9 Mephitic Blightholders, 3 Plagueverse Crawlers, and 3 Defilers, and they all have like a 4-up involve, 5-up Feel No Pain.
Yeah.
You've got he summons in the Tallyman, so you can just make them all really, really strong. You know what I mean? A couple of Demon Princes, a Flamed Bro, a Tallyman to give them all reroll hits in combat. Like it was a very killy like Nurgle list, and he tabled me, but I won, right? And I killed, I think, 2 models. Like
They just don't die.
yeah, I mean, I wasn't gonna try kill him. I physically can't kill his models like that. There was no point in really trying, so I just went for objectives and stopped him from scoring points. So that's what I think that comes to like the gameplay in general. It's one of the reasons I love 9th edition. Is that whole 8th edition mentality of like just punch you and then when you're down just keep on punching you so you don't get back up, like that doesn't really work as well anymore.
No.
You have to have a lot of depth to an army, like being able to punch but also being able to take hits or move or come out in different locations or take objectives, take away objectives from people, shoot, combat, different phases, psychic morale. There's a lot of synergies that you're looking at in 9th.
No, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
No, and I'm honestly really excited to see the new codex drop. Hopefully, very soon. And just to see the new tools that they're going to give us to kind of really emphasize on what GW was saying in their previews. Like they're going to hit harder, they're going to be even faster. Like I was reading that line, I was getting excited. I'm like, this is Drukari. Like this is how they're supposed to play. And then they previewed the whole Incubi stat line. I'm just like, this is an elite unit. Like everything so far, like nothing is. I don't think anything could really disappoint me at this point.
Yeah, no, I like even nowadays, like when I'm playing right now, before the release of the new codex, and I look at it and go, hey, I had like 50 attacks with these witches. If they were only AP1, like imagine, or something, like if they were
Hmm.
only just a little bit better, like they would have done like way more damage. You
Oh
know what I
no,
mean?
definitely.
So it's
Yeah.
cool to kind of make those like those comparisons. And
Hmm.
even now, when I'm like, I have my little 5-man unit of incubi. I run them
Hmm.
5 incubi in a venom. They're like one of my favorite units at the moment. But every time I run them into a unit of intercessors or something, or incursors or whatever, I'm like, normally they don't all die. But in a few months or in a
Oh,
month, oh baby, like that unit of intercessors is just dead.
I don't know. They're just like, okay, do I pull them now or do you really want to roll?
Exactly.
But
Oh, strength
I'm
5, 2
really,
damage. Don't even get me started.
I'm really
And then
hoping
I'm
they keep the lethal precision.
If they do, then they would be like crazy. I could see it changing, being like lethal precision being more like an AP boost. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like if they
mm,
roll 6s, then they get like AP 4 or something,
yeah,
which wouldn't be as useful. But without context, I don't like making assumptions
Yeah.
no.
because there's no point. Like
Well,
people,
it's like
for
the Death
example,
Guard guys today.
exactly. I
Oh
was gonna say
God,
everybody's like,
yes.
"Oh no, Death God! Oh no." Okay, fair enough. Everybody's entitled to their opinion because opinions are like farts. Everybody has them, and some
Hmm.
smell and some don't, and that's okay. Um,
Very, very well put.
It's a
Very well
right?
put.
Exactly. Okay.
analogy I've never heard before.
So, it's you can't really. Okay, so they're getting extra wound. Discussing resilience has changed, but you have no idea what other things are going to be enhancing that. Psychic powers, abilities, relics, warlord traits. Like there's so much other stuff, stratagems, right?
Hmm.
Yeah.
That you have no clue without context what it's going to mean, right?
Exactly. And I
And
think somebody even
yeah,
posted today about the whole thing, and GW actually responded with wink, wink, doesn't mean it could be lying somewhere else. And because they keep talking back
exactly.
to like with Morty, saying that when he's on the field, treat this as its turn 4. So I'm
Mhm.
almost wondering if it's going to be like a Dark Elder or Power from Pain. It's
Yeah,
like, are they going to have a chart and is
the
disgusting resilient
contagion
going to be in
level goes
there?
up,
But
goes or something. Like who knows what it is, but if there's one thing I've learned from GW over the last few years is they have some really creative people that are not only thinking competitively, they're thinking like, what would be really cool? It'd be
mm,
really cool. The Death Guard would be really durable. How do we make Death Guard really durable? Like and in line with like the new rules. And how do we sell a bunch of models? Well, quote quote whatever. I don't know if they kind of think that way, but you know, keep an open mind is what I'm saying. So if
mm,
they do that with the Drukari or they don't, I'm excited about mixing and matching covens and witch cults and cabals in a single detachment as
well, it's
Yeah,
going to
it's
be
examples
gonna
of
be
that,
huge.
huge.
right?
I'm very
Because
excited.
at the same time, it might be a little restrictive in the sense that it
Mm,
might have to be like, if you take one of each HQ or whatever, you can take models from that HQ in the same detachment. And, who knows what it is? It's
hmm.
probably going to have some sort of caveat, right? Like it wouldn't
Yeah.
just be for free, unless it is, in which case, thank you, GW. But, I could see them kind of doing that. Real Space Raiders, right? You
Mm,
can
Yeah.
Drukari is the main keyword, not your obsession. Your obsession just
hmm.
gives like your unit, or maybe obsessions are more like unit specific rules, or like one unit gets an obsession because that one unit is very good at something specific. Like who knows?
Hmm.
Who knows? As long as I can use my Tantalus, my Reapers, my Ravagers, I just want to see Dissy Ravagers put the fear of the God Emperor into the filthy Space Marines
Yeah.
again.
Let's add more damage.
And you know what? And this is just wishful thinking on my part. You know what? Necron, Silent King, makes his way back. And I've heard you say this many times on some of your episodes, but just give us Vect. Come on.
Vect
Just give us
back
Vect.
would
Come on.
be amazing. And of course, with the new plastics they're putting out, I can only imagine how badass
Oh my
a
god,
Vect would look with the new like molds and stuff they can put together. Like
remold
him
a
on like this
Tantalus.
giant dace or his own personalized Tantalus now, like or something
Yeah, a
crazy, and then we
baby
get a plastic
Tantalus.
Tantalus and a Vect. Come on.
Just take my money. Take my money.
Gonna start saving now. A little penny pinching every day. Penny for Vect. Penny for Vect.
For now, I'm just hoping we get some plastic mandrakes and some plastic grotesques.
Yeah, give us some more plastic.
Yeah, all of the resin costs, like the fail cost or whatever, that going to like plastics or multi-pose kits. That's definitely something I would hope. They did it with the racks, like putting out the like
Exactly.
plastic rack kits. I can only like it's probably just sitting there. They're just waiting for that sort of like timeline to sort of progress with it.
Yeah, I was actually very surprised when the racks got turned to plastic that they didn't follow suit with the grotesque, just being like I said, just make the whole coven into plastic. But
They're just waiting for the right time, I presume.
The time is now.
The time is now. Come on, Games Workshop. We
Now
know
get
you're
it.
listening out there to us. You and your crazy like spam bots. Come on.
You're
The agents
revenant
are
on the
everywhere.
shelf.
Your agents are everywhere. Tell the Gene Stealer cult to tell GW.
So question I have for you. So the world of Warhammer very important to you. What made you decide to jump into the world of YouTube with Warhammer?
So that's a good question actually. I started SkaredCast with a podcast.
Okay.
That was my first foray into creating content. I had SkaredCast. It was hosted on Podbean. You might even, I don't know if you could go to the archives and probably listen to a lot of the episodes there, but it was just like a half hour to an hour show, and I did it once a week. And I did it for a couple of years.
Okay.
And I got to interview some really cool people like Andy Chambers and like all these like really cool like the Black Library authors, and I had like competitive players. So it was like a just like a variety show, which was really fun.
Okay.
And eventually like this whole YouTube thing was like, this YouTube thing sounds really interesting. And there was this guy called Eldar Corsair who used to do YouTube videos up here in Canada. And I kind of molded my YouTube channel around like what he did. He had his Samhain. It was a very, very iconic looking Samhain army.
Okay.
Like you couldn't miss it. It was like that was his army. And he did a video every once in a while just playing recap style bat reps, like at the end of every phase or whatever. Or at the end of every turn, he'd just do recap bat reps. And I was inspired by it. So I was like, that sounds really cool. So then I decided to start it, and it was just a way for me to sort of showcase. Kind of like I liked creating content. I had a blog. I liked like blogging and doing articles and stuff, and it was just like a natural transition into more of into a format that was a little easier for me to sort of put content out for. I found the visual aspect and putting like a video together was a lot easier for me than like editing a whole podcast and like writing a whole article and stuff like that. So you can still watch my first bat rep, which was I want to say 12 years ago now, almost.
Oh wow.
Like no, 10 years ago, because it was the new Dark Eldar stuff had like recently been released. No, 8 years. Was it 8 years ago? I think it was about eight to 10 years ago. But it was the new Dark Eldar stuff had just been released. So yeah, about 8 years ago then. And I played against my brother, and it was a terribly lit basement with like cardboard terrain. And it's still on YouTube. So if you want to go watch it, it's really
I'm gonna
funny.
have to go even further back in the archives.
Yeah. You can literally go to videos, sort by date added, oldest to newest, and just click on it. It's the first video I ever posted, and it's hilarious. And and from then on, I just kind of posted a video whenever I would play a game, because I played a lot of games. I was like, I'm just gonna film every game I play, and I'm just gonna put it on YouTube, and that's kind of how that started. And and then 2 years ago, I decided to turn it into my job, because I was like hit rock bottom what I was doing. I had like a marketing and sales business and it was eating my soul away.
Mm.
So I decided to shut that down and jump into content creation full time. So I've been very, thankful, very grateful that that's something I can do every day.
No, and congrats on you. Like I said, to be able to make this into a full-time job, and like if anybody like myself, Brian, another member of ours, Justin, we're actually all Patreons of yours, and like we do it because we love your content.
Yeah.
Well,
I when I started Eldar, watching your tactical videos in 8th about how to turn the board into a long hammer and anvil is really what really got me into your videos.
Yeah, and it's little stuff like that that I really love doing it. I couldn't do it with like all the community support, like the amount of support I've gotten from around the world, of people who like appreciate it still sort of baffles me because all I do is I literally play games with little toy soldiers and I kind of explain, I try to explain what happens in my head so people can kind of follow like my thought process. And it's really cool to see folks who go, oh, that's a cool idea, or that's a cool idea, and then they sort of apply it or they use it and they see it like they see benefit from it, and I think that's the
Hmm.
coolest thing. Yeah.
No, definitely. And like I said, I've caught myself in many situations where I'd be like stuck in a situation, be like, how do I make this work? And then oddly enough, be like, Scurry uploads new video, how to do blah blah blah. I'm like, all right, let's learn.
Yeah, and there's so much, especially with such a diverse faction. But a
Hmm.
lot of the stuff works for everything, right? Like board control, zoning, like just they're just like generic concepts, right? Like game concepts. Making sure you pile in, activate a unit, pile it in, then consolidate it before moving on to the next unit, right?
Hmm.
Knowing that you can activate a unit to charge that has no models within an inch of it, right? So you get like a free 6-inch movement with it. Just
Hmm.
little tidbits like that can really enhance your gameplay when it comes to the technical aspect of the game. And I love that. That's part of that chess, back and forth, like little chess piece style games that I enjoy so much because the Drukhari sort of enhance that aspect of the game because there's no psychic phase, right?
Hmm.
You don't really have the durability that most armies have, and so you have to sort of you know put double down on your strengths to like mitigate your weaknesses,
No,
and
and very
I
true.
find it challenging and rewarding as well.
No, definitely, definitely. And like I said, I feel the same way. It's like I said, when you can pull off a maneuver, and it's just like you said, it's just so satisfying to make everything fall into perfect sync. Because a lot of people, like you said, where Drukhari have no psychic, we are clearly glass cannons. So to really utilize your main focus and just to have it work on people that have the resilience or this and that, it's just like, ah, yes.
Yeah, it's and it catches your opponents off guard, because we as like, or anybody who does play the Drukhari, and this could go with any faction, right? But if you play like your faction and you've been a diehard player of your faction for a long amount of time, you have a sort of like a unique understanding of the limitations of your faction, but you also know how to stretch the envelope when it comes to the utility of units that some people in the quote online meta
Hmm.
tend to disregard, right?
Yeah.
And I find that someone who's passionate about their army and who loves playing with their specific faction tends to find combinations and combos that end up being really useful, however, aren't really talked about in like a competitive scene because people tend to gravitate for like the things that are big and flashy good.
Hmm.
Like, this is big and flashy. And then they go, check this out. It's the most obvious combination. It's so obvious, right? Because it's so powerful. It's
Hmm.
obvious. But then you play against some guy that's been playing in his basement for 10 years and he uses like the randomest warlord trait, the randomest relic that you're like, what the hell do those even do? Then he runs this like weird psychic power, and then a unit that you've never heard of before. But then all of a sudden they put all the things together and they're like, cast a psychic power, use the relic ability, use their warlord trait, and all of a sudden this like random unit you've never heard of before like eats your whole army. And you're like, what the hell? How have I
And that's why
never seen this before?
and that's what I love about the game is like 'cause when I first started off, my first army was chaos, and I collected as much chaos as I possibly could. And every game I would play, I would always have a different list because I wanted to be like, all right, well, how do these guys work in this game? Whatever, next game we'll take them out and go with this. And like you said, then you come up with the most random strategies.
Yep.
And just because on paper it doesn't look like they're overpowered, but it's just in retrospect, it's just like, no, you need to read the fine line and really see what they truly do. And just like you said, it's just kind of give the most random stuff and just catch people completely by surprise.
Yeah. So it's one of what I recommend that, for example, when you play a game, any game you play, right? I even me right now, if I play especially a tough game, like a tough game that I had, I'll spend time that evening and I'll reread my whole codex. And I've, how many times I've read my
Mm.
codex? A lot. But I'll read every ability, every like entry for every unit, every stratagem, every relic, every rule or trait, because sometimes situations that you had will kind of breathe new light and life into specific things you might have overlooked the first couple of times you kind of glanced over them.
Mm.
And every once in a while, you're like, oh, that would have been so useful in that one specific scenario. And then you can like relate it to how often can I run into that sort of scenario? And then all of a sudden, a relic that you might have never used becomes more of a mainstay in like a list simply because you took the time to kind of put on a different shade of glasses and read your book with like a different perspective.
Hmm.
And I think that's very valuable to do as you're trying to get good with a faction. And this is for every faction.
No, definitely. So, tournament scene question I have as I see all many first place wins in the back of you. What to you would be your biggest victory? Your biggest tournament that you can say, you know what, I won this tournament.
Um, It'd have to be the Capital Seed Bloodbath in 2018. It's a 120 person major. And that was probably the one that I'd say that was like a good personal accomplishment because it was a complete flip. I went to the same tournament in 2017, and I went like 3-3 or something like that at a 6 round event, and I was very disappointed in myself.
Mm.
And so my goal was to go and do better than I had the year before. So that whole year I spent basically putting my head down, building a specific list, crafting it, and playing it over and over and over. And then I took it to an event. I won a major like early in the year. Then I won like a GT. Then I was part of Team Canada. So I went to like Europe and played it in Europe, the same list. And then I came back and then played at the Capital City Bloodbath and took the event. And I'd
Nice.
say that was like, because it was a whole process and it was
Hmm.
very rewarding to like get the goal, and then just crush the goal, which was my original goal. Um, and then my next one is just being a part of Team Canada. And last year we took best sporting team out of like 35 teams or whatever, like worldwide.
Nice.
So that was a big accomplishment for me. It's like we got middle of the pack in terms of like a team. It's still
Hmm.
work in progress in terms of our competitive gameplay level at the
Hmm.
international stage. However, that was a big accomplishment, was that best sporting team. So I'm very proud of that.
Nice. So, how
Right
many
on.
years actually have you been on Team Canada now?
So my first year was 2018.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, so 2018, and then we went 2019. Of course, this year was canceled,
Hmm.
so leap year. But we're planning and practicing for 2021.
No,
Right on.
perfect. Did you have a question, Brian, or?
Um, More or less, just what have you? I know you've been dabbling in sisters and stuff too, watching your
Hmm.
streams. Um, how do
They're
you
right up
find
there.
how do you find they play against your Drukari, or like what drove you to go to sisters?
Um, well, I had about 1,500 points worth of Sisters of Battle in an old box, and
Just
A
gathering
I
very
had
dust.
heavy box by the sounds of
yeah,
it,
yeah,
then.
very. It's an old pewter. They're literally old pewter up there. And I had a friend of mine who was starting a paint commission service, best
Okay.
overall painting out of London, Ontario, Canada.
Okay.
And he was like, "Hey, I'll just paint. I'd love to get some promotion. I'll just paint something for you." And I was like, "Well, here's a bunch of sisters." So he just painted all the sisters for me. So I don't play them very often, but every once in a while, they're like a palette cleanser. So that's what I use them for. It's always
Yeah.
good to have something that's completely different than what you play with normally. Because
Mhm.
a lot of the times you get to that point where you're just burnt out. You're like, yeah, I just need a palette cleanser. So that's what they're there for. The same as the guard. It's just
Yeah.
I get excited about using strategies and techniques and gameplay mechanics that I don't get to use playing Drukhari, right? Because they're just not viable, or the army build doesn't really give to it or whatever. But in terms of the sister gameplay, like they're surprisingly durable, and I feel that the way I use them is more in a supporting role to my guard or to my Black Templars. So I rarely use them as like a solo army, if that makes sense. But things like multi-meltas and Repentia and Sephiroms, like a good Sisters army player will give you a run for your money. They are tough, they hit hard, and they will surprise you if you don't know what the miracle dice mechanic is capable of.
I've definitely heard many stories that they're like, I lost the game because of the stupid miracle dice. And I
Yeah,
get to play against the sisters, so I haven't experienced it myself personally, but
yeah,
I've definitely heard the stories.
There's not a lot
yeah,
of sisters players over here in New Brunswick, so
Mm.
yeah. Well, miracle dice are just one of those things that they like in a game of chance, right? Where dice are dice.
Mhm.
And
yeah.
when it leaves your hand, it can be a 1 or it could be a 6 and anything in between. Like this, you don't have any control over it by the time it gets rolled. So having the ability to control a dice to make it 100% certainty of what you need it to be in a game of chance is unfathomably powerful. Right? But it's about the fact that you can use it in certain situations that make it like a guarantee powerful. So, so a lot of sisters players will keep a 5, a 6, they'll keep a 5, a 6, and a 6 nearby, right? And those 3 dice right there are like the secret sauce for the Repentia, right?
Mhm.
Because they can get out of their rhino 3 inches, then they can use a miracle dice for an advance of 6, so they
Mm.
automatically advance 6, so they're now 9, so plus their movement, which I think is 6 or something, so that's 12 plus 3. They've gone 15 inches out of this rhino.
Oof.
They have a stratagem to advance and charge, so they can just spend a CP to advance and charge,
Mhm.
and then you can replace both dice of your charge roll with 2 miracle dice, which then is the 5 and the 6. So whatever was within 12 inches of them can get charged, guaranteed without rolling a dice.
Jesus.
It is
So
pretty gross.
that's a 27-inch threat range out of a rhino for a little sister unit that then gets +1 to wound and has extra attacks and like just goes in, and if they die they do mortal wounds to you and they've got film pain and they'll just like eat something. But they're like a 140-point unit. So the trade-off is really good. They'll go in,
Mm.
they'll nuke something, they fight twice or whatever,
Mhm.
if they need to, and then they die. And then the second squad does that next turn. And then the third squad does it the turn after.
Oh,
Right on.
so
it really
so
makes me
there's
not want to play sisters now.
do not underestimate the Repentia.
Oh,
It's also at a
jeez.
deep strike, right? They can deep strike the Zephyrim with the power swords,
Mhm.
and it's a 9-inch charge. But if they have a 4 and a 5 in their miracle dice, that's a guaranteed
You're
charge.
just
It's
too
not a
far
9-inch
away.
charge. They just show out a deep strike and charge you. There's no like, and there's no vecting it. There's no like, I'm just gonna stop that from happening. It's just like
No, just
miracles.
it's just happening.
It just happens. Yeah, exactly.
Now, when did you start getting into coaching people, and what by going over the other codexes and the other armies, what have you noticed that helped you increase or improve your gameplay?
Yeah, as it's funny, coaching. So I started coaching um a little bit before I went into the gaming full time. So I had a couple of coaching clients by the time I decided to jump in full time, and I had a great 2018 season. I kind of showed off what I could do, and then I had a lot of people like reach out to me and go, "Hey, I'd love to like learn from you or whatever." So I decided to kind of do a thing. I keep it relatively small. I have like a limit of like 9 clients at a time because I don't like. I like giving everybody a very personalized sort of experience.
Yeah.
But from coaching someone playing Tau all the way to coaching someone playing Adeptus Mechanicus or Black Temp or like White Scars or Salamanders, like I've coached people playing a whole variety of lists. It has done 2 things. One, it helps me see a different faction as someone is developing ideas for a faction or helping someone develop ideas for a faction. But it also kind of forces me to learn more about the meta. So keeping on top of things and combos and relics and what people like to use and what people don't like to use, or what people are finding like actual physical like success with on the table, not just theoretical success. And that's 2 things you have to kind of try and separate. You can say, hey, these are the best unit mathematically, but then when you put it into like a game scenario, it keeps on floundering every single time because it doesn't really work within the game mechanics. You can actually see that when clients come back with like, hundreds of games, and you can kind of just see the numbers. These units do well, or this mission is really useful, or this secondary choice is fantastic for this army or not, or so there's a lot of data that kind of you end up learning that that then you can kind of apply when you're trying to teach someone faster. Be like, hey, this is what I found, and in what we've been working on with this person over here. So odds are it's going to be very similar for you.
Yeah.
Right on.
So as we're nearing the end of the episode, I just got one last question for you, and without giving away too much information if you don't want to, but 2020 is coming to a close, 2021 right around the corner. Do you have any big plans of trying anything different for the new year coming up, or anything like that, as far as even personal in the game, the channel, or?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm definitely not shy with sharing like information. I know some people are very like, I've got my secret list and I'm not telling no one. But
It's my
you know,
precious.
it's
And
my
that's why I'm asking,
precious.
just to make
I
sure.
Yeah, no, I know. It's funny because I know a couple of people in Toronto that are like that. Be like, I'm gonna play you, but you can't film me because this is a super secret list. I'm like, okay, fine. So
Just phone out from the
yeah,
corner of
it's
your
my
pocket.
precious. No pictures. Yeah. So right now, because the Drukhari Codex is so close to being released, all the pressure for me is off. Like I have no pressure, I have no expectations. So I'm literally running whatever I want.
Yeah.
Just have fun with it.
I just literally have. I went to Torment. I ran the Tantalus. I ran like Lilith. I've been having so much fun just running Lilith with a bunch of Cult of Strife witches. My latest list has like just a bunch of Venoms, and I've got like 3 units of witches, 3 units of Cabalite warriors, 3 units of Rax, 3 units of Incubi, right? 3 units of Mandrakes. So it's like just a bunch of just everything, just for fun. And but when it comes to New Year, one of the things I am planning on doing is as soon as I get the new codex, I'll be taking like my standard competitive lists, like the multiple lists that I've been playing competitively and had a lot of success with. And what I'm doing is I'm literally just transferring those old lists into the new codex.
Okay.
That's the first thing I usually do. I don't care about like all the new toys and stuff like that. First thing is I want to see something that is tried and true, like my 2018 list that was 6 Talos, bunch of grotesques, the Racks, right? Like the Ravagers. I'm going to put it in a list. Can I run that list again? Right? Like, is it viable? Is it the same amount of points? Is it not? Like, what do I have to change? And then eventually it's literally play at least with every single different unit once or twice. So I have an idea of what they do on the table. And then do for the channel, of course, revisit my unit by unit series for the Drukhari because it's a new codex and it'll be a new edition. And I get to basically go through every single unit in the codex go over their lore, and then go over like their unit options and what I think is good / not good, and then do videos on the stratagems and the secondaries, and just kind of just completely dissect it like on an operating table. Just start pulling parts out and kind of figuring out what goes where. So,
definitely excited for that.
Did you have
Yeah.
plans to do the missions and secondaries for 9th as well?
I do, yeah. It's on the docket of things to do. Because of the fact that 9th edition has been such a roller coaster with COVID, and things have like come and gone. I've had like a whole bunch of other sort of side projects that I've had to really focus on. So I've been trying, like I've done one video a week really. However, yes, playing like every single mission and all the different secondaries and giving that whole like tactical like overview of how I play each mission. I just like having a good amount of information personally on how to play the missions before I start talking about it. Because if there's one thing that I try and keep to is making sure that when it comes out of my mouth, it's from experience, not just like theory, right? So I like you saying, hey, this is what I physically found, not this should work in theory. No, I physically have done these things on a table. So when I tell you about something it's because I've used an Urgle, I've used a Slith, I've used Scourge, I've used Mandrakes, I've used a Razorwing Flock and a Clawed Fiend and a Chimera and a Beast Pack Master. I've used them in all these combinations. So when I say this is what I do with this unit, it comes from me physically putting on the table and using it and finding out how to best use it.
Nice.
So that's what I'm waiting for. What I've been waiting for is just enough games under my belt to really have a better understanding of like the secondaries and the different missions. Because 9 missions is a lot of missions, especially when you like consider, what secondaries and all the different factions that you want to play against and stuff. And now that we've got the new codexes coming out, it gives you a much better understanding of like what their vision is for 9th edition. So then you can kind of make those sort of statements based on that information.
No, perfect. So before we wrap stuff up, where can people go find you?
Well, you can find me in the bottom of a cave called the the Spire. No.
It's like, okay, so it starts off with at the bottom of
a cave in thespire.com. No, you can find me on YouTube is the easiest way at youtube.com/SkaredCast. That's SkaredCast. And then all the links to everything are right on there to Instagram, Facebook, Patreon, Twitter, you name it. So I've got your flavor of the month. And we do a live stream on Twitch every Tuesday through Friday, 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So if you just want to sit down, hang out, chat, do some hobby, there's a bunch of us usually just chatting and hobbying away and listening to music and stuff. So you are invited.
Perfect. I'll have all those links in the descriptions below for you guys. But huge thank you to you, Skari, for jumping on an episode and just like I said, taking a trip down memory lane.
Thanks a lot for having me. This was a lot of fun. I am a media attention addict, so no, I appreciate it. This has been super fun. I love chatting shop. So this is great.
No, definitely. So from my family, the Bolters and Heretics family, I want to wish you a very Merry Christmas, a nice Happy New Year, and hopefully in the new year we'll be able to have you on for another tactics video.
Yeah, let's do a deep dive into the Drukhari Codex.
Oh, I can't
we do
wait.
our review.
Yeah, that'd be great. So yes, you should see my fingers right now.
I'm sure everybody's picturing it right now.
Our second AA meeting.
Yes, my precious. Yes.
All right, so once again, thank you very much, Skari, and everybody, have yourselves a great night.